Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Hi, listeners. We're back again, season 5, episode 4. We have Erica D'Arcangelo coming from Tampa, Florida. And if you're new to this podcast, first of all, thanks for tuning in. Somehow we've been listened to now in 57 countries and 770 something cities. And this podcast is part of a nonprofit called C4 Leaders. And we're the only nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. We also write children's books, obviously host this show, and then we use the most amazing, don't take this wrong, Erica, and it's going to get a little bit competitive, but most amazing handmade, hand-tossed sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. So if you're interested in checking us out in that space, you can just go to pizzadays.org, and it's Pizza days, days.org. I don't know why everybody always asks me, is there a Z in there? No, it's days.org. So here we go. A little bit about our guest. And we always like the listeners to know where you can find her and check her out and purchase her books and learn more about her. And it's a cool website, astoryaboutpizza.com. Astoryaboutpizza.com. So about our guest, Erica D'Arcangelo grew up in a traditional Catholic Italian family with her parents and 4 siblings. Erica began her career in the digital marketing industry, but soon realized her DNA was pulling her back to her Italian roots. Erica is the granddaughter of a pizzaiolo who immigrated from Italy to Pennsylvania. Erica's grandfather, Pietro, had a dream of starting a family restaurant. In 1960, he took action towards making that dream a reality and solidified the D'Arcangelo's legacy. D'Arc's Pizzeria continues to thrive today, celebrating over 65 years of sharing the Italian culture with the intent of using culture to build community and celebrate family. The essential ingredient, pizza, which inspired Erica to write a book about her grandfather's journey and the positive impact pizza has had in shaping the trajectory of his life and the future lives of the D'Arcangelo family. Thanks for telling your grandfather's story, for sharing the many gifts with the world, and for being our guests on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Anytime I get a chance to talk about pizza, it's really changed my life. But let's get in. So you're a new guest, and we always start with a thought of the day, which is a quote that I picked after researching you. And this one comes from Hippocrates. And here it is: let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. What does that mean to you?
I think that there's 2 meanings to it. And I think it's a spiritual sense and also a physical sense. So what we put in our bodies is really what we get out of our bodies. But also spiritually, food really brings people together. And so does pizza. And I think it really provides more than just people sitting and eating. It's an experience, and it's what, I was brought up with, that I was born into. And it's a way that we celebrate and have memories together.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, so we've been doing this. We're season 5. I don't even know how many episodes we have, but over 150. And we are 100% with the quotes kind of resonating with our guests. So would you say that's still true?
Oh, 1,000%. It was perfect.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. This one of the most fun parts of me. One, just researching the guests and kind of getting to know their story and learning from them. And so don't get it twisted. When you see my head down, I'm not on my phone. I'm taking notes. And I usually end with 3 or 4 pages of notes and try and pick 1 or 2 things that I want to add to my life recipe from each episode. But yeah, I saw this quote and I was like, oh man, that's it. And it's funny because I don't know, millions of quotes that I could pick, for every guest. And that usually takes me a good chunk of time. But then the quotes, usually it's like someone shines a light down on them and it's like, that's the one. And it's, so much fun. And then I love, I'm a nurse is what I did for 30 years. And,
Wow.
So yeah, seeing that word medicine, and then medicine be your food. And yeah, just like I love how you tapped into the spiritual and physical, aspect of it. And then in researching, you and your family and what your grandfather's done of just building community and using community as a medicine, using family as a medicine. I was like, oh yeah, that's the quote. But hey, let's get going. So, I don't know what you call it. It's not a goofy question, but it's definitely not probably the best one. But I always like the listeners to kind of know, hey, how did things start? And, so for you, what was life like growing up?
Sure. So life growing up for me was very family oriented. My parents are high school sweethearts. Both my parents pretty much grew up at Diarc's Pizza. Opened in 1960. I think my dad was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. My mom started working there when she was 14, and they got married. They had 5 kids. We're all about a year and a half to 2 years apart. And it was like working at the pizza shop all together. We started folding boxes when we were like 8, 9 years old. My grandfather paid us 10 cents a box and worked our way up and just eating and laughing and spending time together and, sometimes arguing because that's the way it goes sometimes with families, but always making up and just a lot of food, a lot of family, a lot of noise, but very good noise.
Mm. Did you guys speak Italian at all? Are you fluent in Italian, or was that maybe lost a little bit when your grandfather came to the U.S.?
So funny enough, we didn't know that my grandfather spoke Italian until he went to Italy for like back to Italy to visit. And so basically when he did that, he went with like my mom, my dad, and my brother, and he started speaking like fluent Italian and they were all like shocked. They weren't sure. And, my dad's been living over in Abruzzo because he's getting his citizenship and he could speak enough to, survive there. And I was the same. I could speak enough to, order a drink or get something deep, but not and really any more, I guess, than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my wife was born here, but her parents were born in Mexico. And it's depending on when you came to this country, a lot of people looked at like, no, I'm coming to the U.S. I need to speak English. And they kind of lost that part of their culture. And so, yeah, I was just kind of curious for you if that kind of sort of got lost as well. And I love hearing just the stories of you and your family working as a team. I have 8 brothers and sisters, including me.
Wow.
Only less than 11 years between all the youngest and the oldest. And we did so much stuff together working wise, not in a restaurant, but always had to hustle and find a way to make ends meet and work together as a team. So just hearing that just takes me back to kind of growing up with my family. So the show is called Life's Essential Ingredients. And obviously you have your job as in the marketing area is your expertise, but then now you're branching out to becoming an author, and congrats on that. But so you have a few things going on. I know you have a daughter and are busy living your life. What are your life's essential ingredients and who helped you with those, and how do you kind of manage all your daily activity, and what are some kind of things that maybe a listener can take and add to their life recipe?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say a lot of what I got has been from my family. I was really lucky. I have 2 really, really good parents, really supportive parents, and they really taught me a lot about discipline and hard work and prioritizing things. And so when I became a mom, I thought, no matter what I do, no matter what company I have, no matter how much money I have, I'm a parent first. My daughter is my first priority, her safety, her welfare, and taking care of her. And then obviously with my business and just really using discipline and just making sure that I set goals for myself and I work to achieve those goals, and I'm willing to put the work in, knowing that there's going to be hardships along the way, but continuing to do what I have to do despite those hardships.
Mm. Yeah, I love nothing ever comes easy that's worth having.
Yeah.
And not to get in and pull in your daughter and not to sound like an old guy, because there's just so much value to discipline and hard work. But have you given her those ingredients, and how well has she received those? Or has there been a little bit of a disconnect with, as time has marched on, that life has gotten, I'll use the word busier, but that's not the right word, because I think people have always had so much going on, but now there's so many other distractions that perhaps kind of interfere with that discipline and developing that work ethic, because you can only put your energy into so many things. And just in my opinion, I don't know your daughter, but I feel like we're kind of losing sight of what's worthy of our energy.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I will tell you, I think about consistency. So I think with any child, it's just setting the guidelines, being consistent. And then also there's an exchange factor. So I know parents, they do so much for their kids, and sometimes they don't expect the kids to do anything in return. And one thing that we did with her that I really like is that we do expect her to exchange. Now she can do that at her own level. Like as a little kid, she can clean up her toys. Or, now she's a little bit older and she helps us in the marketing company because she wants to do marketing. So I thought, okay, she can do the first thing I started out with, which is data analytics, numbers and tracking. This will give her something that she, can understand in this industry, because there's a million facets to marketing. Now, when she has this, she can do something else. Like she's done a little bit of social media for me. Like if I'm, on a shoot or I need some help, I'm like, hey, grab the phone, take these videos, and she can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love I haven't heard of those words, the exchange factor. And again, so much of, maybe it's just, and you're a lot younger than me, but just growing up in the time that we did, back to my family, we all went to private school. And we didn't grow up with much money. So in order to go to that private school, we were the janitors, we were the landscape crew. Our exchange factor was doing all the work that nobody wanted to do. My dad started bingo on Tuesday and Thursday. We would set up and take down bingo, all the, hundreds of chairs and lots of tables. But I didn't like that at all growing up. I was like, man, I just want to get out and play with everybody. I don't want to have to clean up all their stuff. But then you look down the road of like, wow, I really learned a lot of discipline. I learned how to work hard. I learned how to come together as a team and as a family, and so on and so forth. And yes, so much that you can get when you just put in work. And I love how you've created that space for your daughter to get that, whether she realizes it or not. And pretty soon she's going to be out of your nest and, oh yeah, I do have all these skills that mom, put into me. So very cool. And I know for you, you got a lot of those, from your dad and from spending so much time with him and in all the different spaces of which he's traveled and worked. But I just want to give you a quick time to give him some love and tell the listeners about why you love him so much and some of the great lessons that maybe you took from him.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people say this, but like my two best friends are my mom and my dad. So I speak to them, like I probably call them too many times each day. They're probably like, leave me alone. But I really depend so much on them. And they really have both taught me a lot. Like my mom was always like, she always had so many jobs and she's a master gardener and she just created such beautiful things outside. And then my dad was a coach and teacher, and he really helped a lot of kids, and he was a school superintendent. And even now people know him because like they would be like, oh, I had your dad in sixth grade math for sixth grade math. So just all those things are really, I think they really molded me. And then also just, going back into the business and working with my dad as an adult, there's obviously days and times where I was just like shaking my head because we're like a very like polar opposite people. But it was just very cool to see his creativity and his hard work, and how he like restored the building and how he ran the kitchen and how he handled the customers, and just I admired all those things.
I love it. And I normally I don't do this, but you are just like a mirror image of me and my family. And I told you I have 8 brothers and sisters, and my mom died in 2019, and I
Hmm.
had to do her eulogy,
Oh, wow.
which was I had to do both my parents' eulogy. And but I had all my brothers and sisters behind me. We grew up Catholic as well, and
Yeah.
so in introducing, and I'm a basketball coach too, and Mike's a basketball coach, and yeah, we're basketball players at University of San Francisco, which is where we met. And so I've been coaching for, I don't know, 25, 26 years, high school,
Wow.
college, professional basketball. Mike been coaching for a long time too. But anyways, back to, so I kind of took how that ties into my mom's eulogy is I kind of took an announcer's kind of stance for part of the eulogy. At guard, number 1, and mom's favorite, and I went into, Margie, and then at forward, number 1 and mom's favorite, so everybody was number 1 and mom's favorite.
I
And,
love it.
and I don't know how she did it, but, and my dad was amazing and a hard worker and from West Virginia, out kind of where probably had similar, life. I know you guys had coal mines in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, same kind of roots, for my dad, of very humble and, but he was an alcoholic and kind of let that kind of guide his life a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So my mom did all the heavy lifting, but somehow the world just stopped and you felt like an only child,
Wow.
with her. I don't know how she did it with everybody pulling at her, but so everybody was mom's favorite and number 1, and she had 8 best friends and really didn't need a whole bunch outside of that space. So I just love how family is so much for you, and yeah, we've tried to do that. I have 2 daughters and tried to do the same and feel like our kids actually like us, and
Yeah.
and want to spend time with us. And so that does sound however it sounds, but I don't think it's all the way normal now. My kids are 26 and 28 and they still want to like come hang out with
Yeah.
dad. Yeah. So fun. But let's get in this. Let's just talk some pies real quick. And then we'll get in. I do want to talk a little bit of immigration, since that's been a big part of your life. And we're not going to get in. This isn't a political show, but I know the world is so different now. But we'll get into that a little bit, and then get into your books and probably be on our way. But let's talk first of all. What and I know. Let me see if I can get the word. I even wrote it here. But you guys make a different kind of pizza. Is it a brusso, or how do you?
Yeah, Abruzzo.
Bruzzo. I don't speak very few words in Italian, but somehow when I'm making it, I try and and I speak a little bit of Spanish. So my accents are just terrible, and I'll be speaking Spanish and I'm sounding Italian, and I'll be trying to speak Italian. I'm sounding like I'm speaking Spanish, but, so I had to look that up, and not that I'm a pizza expert, but, tell the listeners what style of pizza that is, first of all.
Yeah, sure. So it's a rectangular pizza and it's 15 slices. And it's not like a super thick pizza like a focaccia, but it's not like a New York pizza that's like a paper thin pizza either.
Mm-hmm. And then I was trying to read up on it, and it sounds like it's a little bit crispier because you add like 4 cups, depending on how many doughs you're making. But if you're making one batch, you add a bunch of olive oil. And is that true, at least on the internet and kind of research? And that seems like that was one of the differences in that style of pizza.
It really depends on who's making the pizza. Like, I remember my grandma making pizza and she just like grabbed the olive oil and just fired in there. And I was like, wow. But then later I would see my dad or someone else making pizza and like they didn't use as much olive oil, but I make the bread here and I make the pizza crust here just if I get hungry for it. And I use a little bit of olive oil. I kind of like it. I feel like it gives it something nice with the texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you're like, what the heck are they talking about? So obviously I make sourdough pizza, and I probably made over 10,000 now. My wife and I, we
Wow.
a lot of work in this space. But if I'm making just one batch, which would be 7 pizzas, 250 grams per dough, I'll only use 20 grams of olive oil. And that is not much at all. And there's 1,000 grams of Caputo flour, which is what we use. So in this, style, and again, it sounds like Erica's old school with her family grandma, just throwing it in and just knowing exactly how it's going to turn out. But so it changes the texture, of the pizza, like we're talking about. And this is what's fun, where I just kind of geek out, and I've kind of changed it. Now I finally have my recipe where all right, I'm good. My wife gets all shook with me because I keep, for a while I was changing it around, just trying to tweak it. And it's like, no, our dough is on point now. But okay, so we got that one. So what's your favorite kind of pizza? You go home to DArks and hey, Dad, make my favorite pie. What is it?
Well, it's funny because I always almost judge the pizza on the plain traditional pie. And even when I go back to my parents' place, like I get that every single time. But there's also one that my dad makes for me that I get every so often. So it's not on the menu, but I call it the Emery special basically because my dad's name is Emery. So it's a Mike's pie, which is a round thin pie. And he does hot peppers, black olives, a little bit of salami. And then when it's done, he throws some pepperoni on it. And it is like, it's good.
I love it. Do you guys make your own sauce?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Make our own sauce, grate our own cheese. We make the dough fresh every day. Yeah, I've been doing that since the beginning.
Oh man. Well, I might have to, and I'm pretty sure I'm doing it in the fall. I might have to swing by. The nonprofit's going to roll out. We're going to do one Midwest trip. And I always wanted to go to West Virginia where my dad was. So we'll be not too far from you because we're going to swing through like Tennessee. I don't think you'll be too far off the track, but maybe we'll try and make a trip to swing out to DArks and have a little bit of pie out there. But have you?
Yeah, come on in.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you thought about, so C4 Leaders is the name of our nonprofit, and we use pizza to help people make sense of life. And we do experiential activities around that.
Wow.
Brian, and we have a wood-fired pizza oven on the back of a truck's 3,000 pounds. And we travel the country, doing this stuff, building community one slice at a time and creating that space for people to just kind of see and honor, just like you guys are doing in your restaurant. But have you ever thought about kind of what those ingredients kind of mean in your life? And what I mean is like the dough and what maybe that represents, and the sauce and the toppings and the cheese. And for me, I get lost in this space because it just, everything to me has now turned into, it's just how I see everything. But I was just kind of curious if I'm like kind of going off the deep end, or since that's been a big part of your life, have you ever thought about what those kind of represent in your life?
I have, because ingredients are very meaningful. Like, for example, my mom is a master gardener. She grows San Marzano tomatoes. We make a tomato pepper pie. She grows peppers. We use the fresh basil on the fresh basil and cheese pizza. The fresh tomatoes, it's just a fresh tomato pizza that's just so good in August every year. So yeah, those ingredients come from somewhere. And just going to Italy and visiting Italy, you'll see the different regions and the different ingredients in the different regions, and they all have a meaning and a history. And that's one of the beautiful things about Italy, is just seeing all that.
Yeah, no, we've hosted kind of like 3.5 students through Rotary Youth Exchange. I don't know if you're with Rotary, and our daughter got to go to Mexico and live for a year. But one of them was was from Italy. And so right before COVID, we got to go out to Switzerland, France, and Italy. And she took us around and to get to see life from her perspective. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the Camino de Santiago. You ever heard of that?
No.
It's translates to the Path of St. James. And it's I'll use the word spiritual because I think that's what people are looking for, but you don't have to be religious to go on the journey. But it's basically about a 650, 700-mile walk from the most southern part of France all the way across northern Spain. And
Wow.
wife and I did that in May of 22, walked for a whole month. And we met so many people from all over the world. But one of them, couple, was Antonio and Monica. And they're from Pordenone, which is like 45 minutes north of Venice. And so we got to go visit them a couple of years ago. And so we've had the good fortune of going to Italy and checking it out, but I've never gone, and I need to do this and get in with a pizzaiolo who can teach me, more about the history and maybe give me some tips on becoming a better, pizza chef, so to say. So yeah, love what you shared with the toppings. And in our space, we use that for even to represent like the values, in your life. The dough could represent like the trust and the, how the proteins kind of bind and can solidify and provide a solid foundation for people or businesses. The sauce, the second book that I wrote was Lucy's Secret Sauce. And it's like, hey, everybody has this secret sauce that resides in them and that they're waiting to share with the world. And can we create the space for everybody to feel like, hey, people need what I have. And so many times we can do a better job in that space. And then even, thinking about just the heat, for me in wood-fired pizza, to have a good pizza that rises, because my pizzas only take 80 to 90 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So it's 750 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And if I have that temperature at 500 degrees, it's a totally different pizza. Then at 600 and 700 and 750, 800 is too much. Then I'm going to burn it. And then just thinking about, all right, what happens in your life when things get hot, so to say, and stressed, and where do you go? And then on the flip side, how good do you feel when you have that heat that just kind of can loosen you up? And yeah, it's just so much fun to help create awareness around this food that has totally transformed, your family's life, and starting with your grandfather, Pietro. But let's get into you and your book and the inspiration behind taking action towards sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote my book a few years ago, and basically, I was in Florida running my marketing agency. My dad had heart surgery. We decided to go home for the year. I felt my parents needed help. My dad was just recovering. I said, hey, let's go to the shop together. I'll do your marketing. You can, do what you do there. He's so grumpy. He said, I don't believe in marketing. I said, okay, Dad, that's fine. We'll drive in together, spend some time together. It'll be fun. So we started driving 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. And he would tell me all the stories about my grandfather. And we got there and I saw all the, was filming the content, saw all the relics, all the memorabilia. And I just became really inspired by the story of my grandfather, and then wrote the whole story. And I think it took about, a year and a half, maybe even 2. And then I didn't know what to do with it at first. So I just let it sit for 4 months and then decided to use my marketing expertise and, publish it and market it. And here we are.
And what's been the most, when you got your author's copy and actually got the book in your hands, how did that feel?
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. Yeah, that's why I actually wrote a children's series, and the first book came out on February 9th for National Pizza Day. And I have 11 more. And then I have a second novel. And I told my husband this because he's writing a book right now for marketing. And I said, there's no better feeling than opening your first copy of your book that you created.
So you have 11 more books for the children's series that you're writing?
Yeah.
How did you come up with 11, and what's the gist of, the potential titles or just walk me through how'd you come up with 11?
Well, I came up with 12 total, but published one so far. And I would say that a lot of my energy is fueled by matcha tea. So I drink a lot of matcha tea, but I was, at a coffee shop with my very best friend, and we were looking at the book, and she was like, "This would be a really beautiful children's story, just Italian culture, pizza." And I was like, "You know what? You're right." And we were having coffee and tea. So I went home and I wrote the first book, and I was like, "Okay." I found an illustrator, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And then a few days later, I was like, I could do a whole series. There's all these stories about pizza and Italian culture. And so came up with the other titles. And the second book first one's called Pietro's Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to the novel, but very much a children's version. Little boy comes to Italy, loves to make pizza. You go on a journey with him. Second book is Pietro's Pizza Toppings. Teaches kids about different pizza toppings. And then the next one is going to be about Italian Christmases. Because that's I think a cool subject for kids to learn about is just their tradition of the Italian Christmas. At least in our family, it was a really big thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Because I'm saying that I'm writing in my head. I have 5 and I have 2 that are out, and then I'm going to write an adult version. But it's just my illustrator is the best part. I'm not a great writer by any means. It's just kind of my thoughts and heart on paper. But the illustrator is incredible, but expensive. I don't know if, for me. So I got to figure out how can I raise the money? Because you don't really make a whole bunch of money in children's books, at least me, because I'm not. Maybe I can talk to you off the air about marketing and things, but it's on Amazon and anywhere else you can buy a book. But there's so much competition, and mine doesn't even come up because I don't have enough reviews on it. So I'm trying to figure out, can I afford to write the other books? It cost me about $6,000 to write.
We should talk after, because my illustrator is amazing, and she is not expensive, and she's just a beautiful human being and a very beautiful illustrator. And we should talk about the marketing, because there's things that you can do to get your book to stand out.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's do that. And anything else that you want to say? And again, listeners, you can go. Erica's got a great website, and it's just a story about pizza.com. She also has a podcast that you can check out. And that's just a story about pizza, your podcast, or I didn't write down the notes. I listened to you on a couple of those, and I'm hoping I can be a guest now that I make some pizza.
I was going to invite you.
Yeah. That'd be the name of the podcast again?
It's a Pizza Story podcast.
Okay, Pizza Story podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So a lot going on, but I don't want to miss the window to talk about the courage that your grandfather had to come. And I know in researching you that your mom, is Polish and Irish, and obviously her parents, everybody that came here immigrated, but so they came. And I couldn't imagine the courage that it took, back then to leave just all your family and everything that you grew up with to go to a country where most likely you don't speak the language and you don't know what's going to happen. But anything you want to share around, your mom or your and her family, or your grandpa and his family, whatever you want to share about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my grandfather came over when he was I think 7 or 8 years old, didn't speak the language, went to Wimber, PA. And at 9 years old, he was pulled out of school and he worked in the coal mines. And this is Western PA in the elements. And he worked in the coal mines most of his life because he didn't open up the pizza place till 1960. I think he was in his 40s. So this was the majority of his life. And there were so many other people. When we go to Abruzzo, we went to the park and we saw all the names on this plaque. And it was all the Wimber names of all the families. So this is a story that wasn't just him. This was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who came over, and also on, my mom's side. Both of my grandparents, I think my grandfather's family had 4 kids, but my grandmother's had 13.
Mm.
And my grandparents kept everything because they grew up really poor. And then to watch them kind of build a life, and they wanted to leave a life and a legacy for their kids. That's what, my grandparents on my mom's side did. Also, my grandfather, he opened up the pizza shop so that his family would have something so they didn't have to work in the coal mines. So there's definitely something very special about families who come over with nothing. They build something for their family. And when they leave this world, they leave that for their families.
Yeah. Well, hopefully our country can get back on track and realize there's so much value with diversity and creating space for all people in the world to chase their dreams. And if that is in the US, then being able to, create a process, but create space for people to come and try and achieve a better life if that's something that they should choose. But I do want to end probably with one last thing and be mindful of your time. But, we grew up with family meals, and we've tried to instill that in our kids and not having any distraction. And really, even during basketball season, we were playing, at 7:00, we would have dinner at 4:00, because it was important. It would be too late after the game was over. And not to compare, but when we went over to see our exchange students and to experience life through the eyes of the families that were there, because they, just like we took their children in, they took us in. And so we weren't staying in a hotel, we were staying in their house. And that's just how they do it. They wouldn't even think about, you're staying at a hotel. It's like, no, you're part of the family.
We had the same as you because we had exchange students, and then we went over and we stayed at the houses. Like we had one for a summer, and then I went for the summer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So when we were over there, though, the way that they celebrate each other through mealtime, and it's just a whole event in itself, even though it's just dinner for them. But from an outsider's, an American who is, let's hurry up and eat, and then get back to what we're doing. Where there, it's really a celebration. And that better than me. Maybe just paint that picture for the listener that hasn't had a chance to go overseas, or maybe give some ideas on how they could incorporate kind of maybe looking at meal times a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will tell you, we experienced that in Europe, but we were brought up with that. We had dinner as a family, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, we all worked at the pizza shop. We ate together. Sunday, my grandma had dinner every Sunday. And if she didn't have dinner, my other grandma had dinner. And you better not be late for dinner because it was a celebration and it was special. And we would either be celebrating something, somebody bringing home a good grade, or a sports activity accomplishment, or somebody's birthday, or, there was something that was celebrated. And I think that any setting, for a long time, I was a single mom. My daughter and I had dinner every night. I was brought up with dinner. We had dinner. We talked about our day. It's just, I think, a really good thing to have in place because you look forward to that.
Yeah. For sure. We talked about life being busy now, and that's part of, a sourdough pizza. And you're very familiar with sourdough, but you have to feed the starter. So part of my nonprofit, when we work with schools and even businesses, we created this Feed the Starter challenge. And I decided to, with the schools, involve the families in that. And so there's this Feed the Starter family challenge. And the challenge was simple, but not simple. Just have 4 family meals together per week.
I love it.
And then they would do that for a month. And then the people that conquered the challenge, we would all come together as one community. They would bring games and, whatever books. And and then we just sit there and celebrate them conquering their challenge. But in the US, there's only I think it's like 39 or the low 40% of families that actually come to the table for 4 or more family meals.
Wow.
And then when you start to look at time and how fast it goes, and then you start to look at education, and not to get too crazy, but how the teachers are doing amazing work, but they're so busy and have so much going on, and their job has evolved into being a jack of all trades. And not to sound bad, but they don't have time for your kid, and then if we're not making the time as the adults and as parents, who is our kid turning to just sit there and talk about what's going on in their life and everything else that they're experiencing? And so I believe it's one of the best things, one of the best gifts we can give is just using mealtime to just create space to come together and to just listen to each other.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, even now today, we have dinners. When all of us are home for a holiday, or we're home, like we were home for Christmas, I think almost all 5 kids, we were dinner every night. My dad made dinner, one of us made dinner, and we ate together. And that's what I look forward to.
Yeah. 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 No, but all right. Last question. John Austin has a quote that I love. It's the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And I don't want to get too morbid with you, but I am a nurse, and my background was working in the trauma ICU at a level 1 trauma center. And so I've been surrounded by death. And so when you are in that space, you know that it's coming for you, So fast forward for you, 60 years, and you're getting ready to take your last breath. And what is it and you're surrounded by love, at this point, hopefully some grandkids and other people that have been influential in your life. What is it that you want to leave behind as you get ready to go home?
I think the first thing is making the world a better place. And that's partially why writing books is being able to get out to masses of people and get a positive, uplifting message out. So the more books and the more things that we leave behind, the more that message stays and resonates long after we're gone. And then stability for my family.
I'm just taking some notes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Man, well, Erica, thank you so much for being. This was so much fun for me, just listening. And this is way more than I talk in every other episode. So I apologize to you a little bit because I was sharing more than I normally share, but I just couldn't help it. It's just too much we have in common. But again, listeners, you can find Erica and her books. And now we know she's got 10 more coming out, a story about pizza.com. And go to her site. She's got a blog. You can check out her podcast there. You can order the books. And yeah, I think that's a wrap. Do you have any other comments that you want to share before we get off?
I just really appreciate you having me on, and I absolutely want to have you on my podcast. I think that your nonprofit would be perfect.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Normally my Pasho, the mic gets us out of here, but boom, baby, that just happened. We out.